Tonight, we step into the damp wooden room of a 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier, where steam hangs low and the morning shift begins beside quiet vats. There is no hurry here, only warm breath, slow hands, and the soft patience of work. The floorboards are dark with old water, and your boots make a muted sound as you cross toward the settling tanks. Outside, Oslo is still half blue with early light, and the harbor smells of salt, coal smoke, rope, and fish. Inside, the air is thicker, carrying the faint sweetness of boiled skins and bones, softened slowly until they give up their glue. We move carefully here, because everything has weight, and every surface remembers the work of yesterday. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier begins before the city is fully awake, when carts still rattle lightly over stone and gulls call from the grey roofs near the water. You hang your coat on a peg, roll your sleeves just enough, and feel the damp warmth gather at your wrists. The room is not grand, and it does not need to be. It has barrels, pails, wooden paddles, muslin cloth, tin scoops, thermometers, and vats with lids that never quite keep the smell inside. This is a place of patient separation, where cloudy liquid becomes clear by degrees. Fish glue was not a glamorous trade, though it touched many careful crafts. It held wood, paper, instruments, labels, boxes, and small repairs together. In workshops and factories, it was valued because it could dry hard, grip well, and be softened again with heat and moisture. The clarifier's part came after the boiling, after the first rough extraction, when the liquid still carried tiny bits of tissue, oil, scale, and ash-colored matter. Your task is to coax it toward clearness without rushing it. You do not command the vat. You listen to it. The surface trembles faintly when steam moves beneath, and a pale skin sometimes gathers where warmth meets the cooler air. You lift it gently with a flat wooden skimmer, letting the drops fall back in slow threads. The sound is small, almost private, like rain slipping from a roof edge. We stand close enough to feel the heat on the face, but not so close that the steam wets the collar too deeply. The first work of the morning is to check what's settled overnight. In a clarifying room, time does some of the labor. Heavy particles drift down, oils rise, and the middle layer waits, clearer than it was before. You lean over the tank and look, not with impatience, but with the trained attention of someone who has seen many shades of amber. Some batches are pale as weak tea. Some are deeper, like honey held behind smoke-colored glass. A good fish glue clarifier in 1930s Oslo learns the difference between cloudy and merely warm, between spoiled and only strong-smelling, between a batch that needs another pass and one that should be left alone. The nose helps, though not in a dramatic way. Fresh glue liquor smells marine, animal, and faintly sweet, with a steady warmth like a kitchen where stock has simmered too long. If sourness creeps in, you notice it before anyone says a word. Your body becomes part of the instrument. The vats are not silent. They creak softly as heat works through staves and seams. A chain taps somewhere near the hoist. Water shifts in pipes behind the wall. From outside comes the low call of a man at the key, then the scrape of a crate, then the softer hush of distance again. We let those sounds remain where they are. They are part of the room's breathing, part of the day's slow beginning. The fish parts may have come from cod, haddock, ling, or other catch handled around the Norwegian coast, brought through habits older than the factory itself. Skins, trimmings, bones, and sometimes air bladders had their own value if handled properly. Nothing here is purely waste. The clarifier understands that usefulness often hides in what others set aside, and that warmth, water, and waiting can draw a second life from humble remains. You take a long-handled ladle and lower it into the tank, slowly enough that the sediment below is not disturbed. This is one of the first rules your hands learn. Do not plunge. Do not stir without reason. Let the clear portion come away, as if it had chosen to rise. The ladle fills with a thick golden liquid, warm through the metal, and when you lift it, the surface stretches slightly before releasing its hold. The liquid is poured through cloth into a smaller vessel, and the cloth darkens where fine matter gathers. Muslin, linen, felt, or layered filtering cloth may be used, depending on the shop and the batch. The material smells of wet fiber and fish steam. You rinse it often, because a clogged filter turns patience into waste. The water in the rinsing tub is lukewarm, cloudy at once, and your fingers feel the slippery residue even after rubbing them clean. There is a quiet satisfaction in this first filtering. It is visible work. The liquid that passes through has changed, not completely, but enough for the eye to rest on it. We watch it collect in the receiving pail, one smooth ribbon at a time. The color seems to deepen as the vessel fills. Small bubbles gather around the edge, and the steam rises with a faint shimmer before disappearing into the rafters. By the time the morning light reaches higher windows, the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier has already made many small judgments, each one modest, each one part of the same slow craft. You have checked the heat, skimmed the top, drawn from the middle, changed the cloth, and set aside what must settle again. Nothing looks hurried because nothing can be hurried. Glue resists haste in the same way, bread resists a cold oven, or ink resists damp paper. There may be a notebook on a shelf near the wall, its pages soft at the corners, from moisture and handling. In it, someone records the batch, the source, the boiling time, the clarification passes, the temperature, and sometimes a short remark. Too cloudy, good color, slight oil, needs standing. The handwriting is plain, because the book is not meant to impress anyone. It is a memory for the room, and you add to it with a pencil kept behind one ear or beside a chipped mug. That mug matters too. It may hold coffee, dark and plain, poured from a pot that has sat near the warm pipe since dawn. The taste is strong, a little bitter, and welcome. You drink it in small mouthfuls, because the room is too warm for haste and too damp for lingering over comfort. Bread with butter, perhaps a slice of brown cheese, perhaps a piece of fish from home, waits wrapped in paper. The meal is ordinary, and that is its kindness. We stay with the work as it opens. The city beyond the windows grows brighter, but the clarifying room keeps its own weather. Steam softens the edges of barrels. Light catches in droplets along the lip of a vat. Your sleeves cling faintly at the forearms. The smell settles into your clothes, and by now you know it will follow you into the tram, the stairwell, and the evening kitchen, even after washing. As the morning wears on, we move from the first settled tanks to the warmer vessels, where the clouded glue liquor must be treated more carefully before it can become clear. The warmer stage belongs to heat, but never violent heat. A 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier watches the thermometer because glue has its limits. Too cool, and it thickens before the impurities can be drawn away. Too hot, and the strength may suffer, the body of the glue weakened by rough handling. You learn to keep it moving within a narrow comfort, warm enough to flow, gentle enough to preserve what makes it useful. The stove or steam jacket gives off a steady, low presence. Pipes knock once, then fall quiet. A valve turns with a small squeal, and you feel the room answer with warmer air. The liquid in the vessel grows looser, more willing to pass through cloth. When the paddle moves, it does not splash much. It folds, heavy and smooth, like thin syrup or broth, and the motion travels outward in slow circles until the surface becomes still again. Sometimes a clarifying agent may be used, according to local practice, and the kind of glue desired. In older glue works, workers might use careful heating, settling, filtration, or materials that helped fine particles gather so they could be removed. The science is simple to describe but delicate to manage. Tiny suspended pieces are easier to remove when they clump, settle, or catch in a filter. Your work is to encourage that without leaving a trace that spoils the glue. You are not thinking in laboratory words as you stand beside the vat. You are thinking of color, smell, feel, and flow. You tilt the ladle and watch how the liquid runs from its lip. A strong batch falls in a continuous sheet before breaking into drops. A thinner one slips away too quickly. A cloudy one looks dull at the edges, as though the light cannot pass cleanly through it. These are quiet signs, and you learn them slowly. The Oslo of the 1930s sits just beyond the walls, with its trams, warehouses, churches, apartment courtyards, and winter mornings that can make breath visible in the street. But in here, the seasons arrive through smaller signals. In winter, your hands are cold when you enter, and the vat warmth feels almost companionable. In summer, the work is heavier, and the air holds every smell longer. On wet days, the cloth dries poorly, and the whole room seems to breathe through damp linen. We take down another filtering frame. It is simple, square, and stained by use. The cloth is stretched and fastened, then wetted so it sits properly. Dry cloth can resist the liquid at first, so you prepare it gently, pressing the fibers into readiness. The first pour is always cautious. You do not want a rush that tears the weave or drives sediment through. The liquid spreads, gathers, and begins its slow descent. There is pleasure in watching a filter begin. The top surface clouds and thickens with what it holds back. Beneath it, a clearer stream forms, steady and warm. A tin pail receives it with soft taps at first, then a rounded pouring sound. You can hear when the flow slows. The note changes. The pail no longer sings in the same way. You lift the cloth, rinse it, replace it, and begin again, because repetition is not a failure here. It is the shape of the work. The clarifier's hands are always being washed and never quite free of the trade. Warm water, soap, and a scrub brush sit nearby. The brush bristles are stiff at first, then soften with use. Under the nails, the residue clings. On the palms, a faint tackiness remains, as if the work has left a thin memory. You wipe your hands on a cloth already marked by the morning. It smells of steam, soap, and the faint animal sweetness of glue. A visitor might think this work monotonous, but we know better after standing here a while. The sameness is where the attention lives. Each batch brings a slightly different body. Fish caught in cold months may behave differently from those processed in warmer weather. Freshness matters. Handling matters. The length of boiling matters. Even the water leaves its signature, because minerals and cleanliness can shape the finished glue more than a careless person expects. The process asks you to be steady. It does not reward clever flourishes. A good clarifier does not show off with speed. He makes fewer mistakes because he has learned to pause before stirring, to wait before drawing, to smell before approving, and to look at the light through the liquid before calling it clear. We follow that restraint, and it begins to feel restful, almost like matching breath to the slow movement of the vat. At mid-morning, another worker may pass through carrying a tray of shallow pans or molds. These are for later, when clarified glue is concentrated and allowed to cool, dry, or be prepared for storage. The exact form depends on the shop and its customers. Some fish glue may be sold liquid, kept in tins or barrels. Some may be reduced further. In each case, clarity matters because specks and oil can spoil trust. Trust is quiet in a factory. It lives in labels that do not peel too soon, chairs that hold their joints, book spines that stay together, and boxes that survive a trip across town. The person using the glue may never think of the Oslo clarifier who stood in steam and watched the sediment fall. That is all right. Many jobs are like that. They disappear inside the reliability they create, and their success is measured by how little anyone notices them. You test another small sample in a glass jar. It is warm against the fingers. Held to the window, it shows its truth. The light from the yard passes through in a soft amber column. A few tiny flecks drift near the bottom. Not many, but enough to mark the batch for one more pass. You set the jar down without annoyance. The work has answered, and now you answer it. When the noon hour comes near, the room has settled into a fuller warmth, and we turn toward the slower business of resting, drawing off, and letting gravity do its old and patient work. The settling tanks are broad and plain, and in the life of a 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier, they are as necessary as any tool held in the hand. Their purpose is not dramatic. They give the glue liquor a place to be still. In stillness, heavy matter sinks, lighter oils rise, and the middle clears. You can almost feel the wisdom of it in your shoulders, because not every task improves by being touched. We lift a lid and let the steam loosen into the room. It carries a warm, thick smell that belongs to fish skins, wet wood, and long heat. The surface of the tank shines dully, not like clean water, but like something denser and more patient. Here and there, a patch of oil glimmers. You draw it off with a shallow skimmer, sliding just beneath the top and letting the unwanted sheen come away. The movement is delicate, and the wrist learns restraint. The sediment below is out of sight, but you imagine it clearly. Fine particles descend through the warm liquid, slow as dust in a shaft of light. Bits of tissue, mineral traces, and dark specks gather where the tank bottom waits. If you disturb them, the whole batch clouds again. So you move as if the room was sleeping. Your boots find the same boards. Your hand rests lightly on the ladle. We keep our voices low, even when no one has asked us to. Outside, lunch wagons and bicycles pass, though their sounds arrive softened through walls and steam. A church bell may mark the hour somewhere beyond the harbour streets. In winter, the bell seems sharper. In summer, it blends with gulls and cartwheels. You do not need to see the city to know it is there. Oslo keeps moving while the glue clears, and the clarifier works in a pocket of warm, useful quiet. There is a habit to drawing from a settling tank. The tap or siphon is placed above the sediment line, and you open it carefully. The first flow is watched closely. If it runs clear enough, you let it continue. If it carries cloud, you stop, wait, or shift to another vessel. The stream into the pail is smooth and golden. It smells cleaner than the rough liquor did, though still firmly of the sea and the boiling room. You may wipe the outside of the vessel with a rag as it fills, not because it must shine, but because hands work better where surfaces are known. Sticky drips attract dirt. Dirt returns to the batch. A tidy clarifier is not fussy. He is practical. We see that in the way tools are placed back in the same corner, cloths are hung where air can reach them, and pails are rinsed before residue hardens at the seam. The human details gather around the work like small belongings. Someone has carved initials into the edge of a bench. Someone keeps a spare pencil in a crack near the window. A calendar from a supplier hangs on a nail, its paper curled by damp. On cold days, gloves dry near a pipe, stiff at first, then softening as the heat enters them. These things do not interrupt the job. They make the job inhabitable. In a trade like this, knowledge passes mostly by standing beside someone. A younger worker learns by watching how the older one holds the ladle, how long he waits after closing a valve, how he judges the smell of a batch without making a performance of it. The lesson is not delivered once. It arrives in fragments across months. Move slower there. Rinse that again. Look at the jar by the window, not under the lamp. Small instructions become a whole craft. We pause near the window with a sample, and the glass is slightly greasy between finger and thumb. Beyond it, Oslo's roofs sit under a pale sky. The liquid inside the jar glows softly when turned. If you hold it still, the flecks reveal themselves. If you shake it, everything lies. So you hold still. That is one of the quiet teachings of clarification. Some truths only appear when nothing is being forced. There are smells that mark the different corners of the room. Near the receiving barrels, the odor is sharp and fresh, closer to the fish market. Near the warm vats, it is deeper, almost like broth. By the washing area, soap and wet cloth take over. Near the stove, coal, metal, and warm dust add their own note. After a while, you no longer name them separately. You move through them as through familiar rooms in a house. The afternoon batch waits in covered vessels, and we do not hurry toward it. Before that, the settled liquor must be moved, the residue scraped, and the tank made ready again. The scrapings are not pleasant, but they are part of the day. A flat scraper passes along the bottom with a dull, resistant sound. The waste is thick, grayish, and heavy. You keep it away from the clean vessels, rinse thoroughly, and let the tank drain until the wood or metal looks ready to receive again. This cleaning is not separate from clarification. It is clarification in another form. The clear batch depends on the clean tank. The clean tank depends on someone willing to do plain work without applause. Your sleeves darken at the cuffs. Warm water runs over your hands. The brush rasps along the corners. There is a rhythm to it. Scrape, rinse, wipe, inspect, and though the words could sound brisk, the body performs them calmly. By now, the day has become familiar enough that your thoughts can wander without leaving the work. You may think of the tram ride home, of supper, of the price of coal, of a child's shoes drying by a stove, or of nothing in particular. The hands continue. The eye returns when needed. This is one of the mercies of repeated labor. It gives the mind a narrow path, and sometimes that path is peaceful. As the afternoon light lowers through the windows, we follow the clarified glue toward its final checks, where color, body, and cleanliness are judged before the day can release it. The final checks for a 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier are quiet, almost domestic in their scale. After the vats, tanks and filters, The work comes down to small samples in jars, a spoon lifted in the light, a finger-testing tack between thumb and forefinger. The room still smells of warm fish liquor and wet cloth, but something cleaner is present now. The roughness has been taken away little by little, and the glue has begun to look like itself. You place several jars on the bench. Each belongs to a batch or stage, and each tells a slightly different story. One is too dull, one is pale and promising, one has a faint surface film that must be removed. The bench is scarred, stained and practical. When the jars touch it, they make a small glass sound. Bright in the damp room, we look through them toward the window, because daylight is honest in a way, lamplight is not. The glue's strength may be checked by cooling a small amount and seeing how it sets, though fish glue can remain more flexible and usable in liquid form than some heavier animal glues. Warmth changes it, cold changes it, water wakes it. The clarifier is not a chemist in a white coat, but he is still a worker of materials, and his judgments are rooted in experience. He knows that clarity without strength is not enough, and strength with dirt is not acceptable. A spoonful cools on a small dish. You touch it when it is ready, pressing gently, then lifting your finger. A thread follows, thin and shining, before it breaks. That thread tells you about body. Too watery, and it snaps away. Too heavy, and it may be difficult for the customer to use. There are measurements, of course, and there are records, but the hand remains one of the old instruments of the trade. Around this time, the factory's sounds shift. Morning bustle has thinned. The heaviest moving of raw material may be done. What remains is checking, transferring, washing, and preparing for tomorrow. A door opens somewhere, letting in a brief draft of cold harbor air. It touches the back of your neck, then disappears into steam. The contrast is pleasant for a moment. Like standing between two seasons, the clarified glue may be strained one last time through a finer cloth. This final cloth must be clean, and the vessel beneath it must be cleaner still. You inspect both before beginning. A speck now would be an insult to the hours already spent. The pour is slow, and the stream is narrower than before. It shines as it falls. The receiving tin gives off a hollow note that deepens as the level rises. Labels matter at the end of the day. A barrel or tin must carry the right mark, because glue from different batches may suit different uses. Cabinet makers, bookbinders, paper workers, and small manufacturers each care about how glue behaves. Some want quick tack, some want clarity, some want a particular thickness. In 1930s Oslo, as in many working cities, trades leaned on other trades in ways that were rarely visible from the street. You wipe the rim before sealing. The cloth moves around the metal edge, picking up amber drops. The lid fits with a small pressure of the palm. If a barrel is used, the bung must sit properly. If tins are used, they must be clean enough for storage and transport. There is no ceremony in this, but there is care. The finished glue leaves the clarifier's hands quietly, ready to vanish into other people's work. We can imagine where it might go. Though we stay with the clarifier, a joiner warms it near a bench. A label maker brushes it thinly onto paper. A repairer uses it on something cracked, ordinary, and worth saving. Fish glue was especially valued for certain delicate tasks because it could grip well without always needing the high heat of other glues. That made it useful in cool rooms, small shops, and careful repairs. Still, the clarifier's world remains the warm room by the Oslo harbor, where practical knowledge is measured in clean pours and settled tanks. You do not need to see every object the glue will touch. It is enough to know that the batch is sound. Many working lives are built on this kind of trust, where one person prepares something another person will rely on without ever knowing their name. Late in the day, the washing grows more thorough. Pails are rinsed, then rinsed again. Cloths are scrubbed, wrung and hung where air and warmth can reach them. The water turns cloudy, then clearer. A brush moves inside a ladle's curve. The scraper is cleaned along its edge. Tools that felt lively in the hand all day become simple objects again, leaning in their places, cooling as the room cools. Your shoulders notice the work now, not sharply, but as a low heaviness across the back and arms. The damp cuffs, the warm face, the smell in the hair, The slight stickiness at the palms, all of it belongs to the end of the shift. You have not done one large thing. You have done many small ones correctly. That is enough. It is often more than enough. The notebook receives its last lines. Batch clear after second filtration. Slight oil removed. Good color. Set aside for morning inspection. The pencil scratches softly. A drop of water has blurred yesterday's entry, but not enough to hide it. You close the book or leave it open to dry, and for a moment the room seems to hold its breath around the completed page. And as evening gathers beyond the harbor windows, we stay a little longer with the closing of the clarifying room, where the warmth fades slowly and every tool returns to its quiet place. The closing of a 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier's room is not a sudden ending, because warmth leaves slowly from wood, metal, water, and cloth. You feel it in stages as the steam thins, as the pipes quiet, and as the floorboards lose the soft heat they held through the day. The harbor beyond the windows has turned dull silver, and the last light rests on wet cobbles, rope coils, and stacked crates. We stand in that fading workroom and let the day settle around us. The vats are covered now, but they still give off a faint breath at the edges. You run a hand near one lid, not touching, only feeling the remaining warmth. A small drop gathers, swells, and slips down the side of the vessel. It leaves a shining path through the dullness. The smell is gentler now, less sharp than morning, folded into soap, damp wood, coal ash, and the clean mineral scent of rinsed metal. A clarifier learns that the last hour matters because tomorrow's first hour depends on it. If a cloth is left sour, it will speak in the next batch. If a pail is put away sticky, dust will find it in the night. If the waste tub is not emptied, the room will greet you badly at dawn. So you move without hurry, checking each humble thing as if it had a small right to be treated well. We lift the rinsed cloths one by one and hang them over wooden rails. They are heavier than they look, and they slap softly against the rail before settling. Water drips into a trough below, each drop spaced widely now. The cloth smells plain after washing, though the work never fully leaves it. You press a corner between finger and thumb and feel whether the fibers are clean enough to dry without stiffness. The floor needs attention where amber drops have fallen and cooled into tacky spots. A bucket of warm water stands near the door, and a stiff brush waits beside it. You kneel or bend, depending on the place, and the brush moves in slow strokes over the dark boards. The sound is rough and soothing. It says the day has been used properly, and now the room is being returned to itself. In the 1930s, Oslo fish glue clarifier's routine, cleaning is not lesser work. It is the hidden part of clarity. The glue that looks clean in a jar has passed through vessels made clean by hands no customer will imagine. You wring the rag over the bucket and watch cloudy water twist downward. It carries away residue, dust, and the small mistakes that never became large because someone saw them early. There may be a clock somewhere, ticking above a shelf or near the office door, but it is not the loudest measure of time. The louder measures are the cooling pipes, the soft knock of a lid settling, and the quiet drip from the drying cloths. Your own breathing slows with them. We are not finished in a dramatic way. We are only reaching the point where enough has been done for the room to rest. The door to the yard opens, and evening air comes in with a touch of salt. It feels clean after the warm heaviness inside. You stand for a moment between the two worlds, one damp and amber, one cold and grey. Somewhere a cartwheel grinds over stone, and a man calls to another in a voice softened by distance. The city is changing shifts too, though it does not use those words. Before leaving, you check the samples set aside for morning. The jars sit on a shelf, where the temperature will fall slowly. Their surfaces are still, and in the dimness they look darker than they are. Tomorrow, held to daylight, they will speak more plainly. Tonight, they only wait. You make sure each label is clear, because even a sleepy hand must be able to trust the marks when dawn comes back. A small stove or banked fire may still hold a red eye beneath ash. You do not leave it carelessly. Coal, wood, and factory buildings teach caution in quiet ways. You close what must be closed, open what must breathe, and leave the warmth low enough to be safe. The metal door makes a dull sound. Ash smells dry and mineral, a contrast to the wet richness of the vats. Now the coat comes from its peg. It feels cooler than the room, rough at the collar, and carrying its own trace of the harbor air. You put it on over work clothes that smell of fish glue, steam, soap, and labor. The smell will ride home with you. People on the tram may notice. Some will know it, because Oslo is a city of trades, and every trade has its weather. We step out with the Clarifier into the evening street, not far, only enough to feel how the body changes after the room. The air touches the face. The hands, washed and washed again, still feel faintly smooth from gelatin and warm water. Your boots carry a little dampness from the floor. Behind you, the clarifying room grows quiet, with the jars on the shelf and the cloths hanging like pale laundry in the dim. The walk home may pass warehouses, quays, narrow shops, and lit windows where supper is being made. The smell of frying onions or boiled potatoes can reach the street, and it feels like another kind of steam, a domestic one. You might hear a tram bell, a bicycle chain, the scrape of a shovel, or the low conversation of workers moving in twos. We keep our pace easy. The workday has already taught the body slowness. Even away from the vats, the mind continues its small inspections. Did the second tank need another hour? Was the pale batch too thin? Did the last cloth hang freely enough? Such thoughts do not trouble you exactly. They move like water under ice, present but muted. A person who clarifies glue learns to live with waiting, and waiting follows beyond the factory door. At home, or in a rented room, or at a family table, the work becomes part of the evening, without being the whole of it. You wash again, more carefully now, perhaps with warmer water, if there is enough. The smell lessens but does not vanish. Bread, fish, soup, coffee, or potatoes bring their own familiar comfort. A chair receives the body. The hands rest, and for a while they do not have to judge anything. But the work does not end, because one day closes. In the quiet trade of a 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier, tomorrow begins inside what was left settling tonight. Tanks rest, samples cool, cloths dry slowly in the dark, sediment gathers invisibly at the bottom of vessels, oil rises in a thin skin. The whole room continues its slow separation after the workers have gone, as if the craft itself keeps breathing. And when morning returns to Oslo harbor, we are back beside the door before the first warmth has fully gathered, following the same clarifier into a room that remembers yesterday. The key turns in the lock with a small metal complaint, and the morning air is cold around your ears. Inside, the clarifying room is darker than the street for a moment. Then your eyes adjust. Shapes become benches, tanks, rails, pails, and the still forms of covered vats. The cloths have dried unevenly, stiff in some places and soft in others. You touch one, and it gives off a clean, faintly marine smell. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier begins again by noticing what changed in the night. A jar that looked clear yesterday may show flecks today. A batch that smelled strong may have softened. A surface film may have gathered where warmth faded too slowly. We do not resent these changes. They are part of the conversation between material and time. The work is to answer them with calm hands. You open a window or door briefly, just enough to let the room breathe. Cold air enters and slides along the floor. It sharpens the smell of the place, separating soap from glue, wood from coal, salt from old steam. Your breath shows for a few moments if the morning is winter cold. Then the stove or steam line begins to wake, and the room moves gradually toward its working temperature. The first sample jar is held to the window. The light is pale, a northern light that does not flatter anything. It passes through the liquid and shows a faint mist near the lower third. Not much, but enough. You tilt the jar, watch the cloud move, and set it aside. The second jar is clearer, with only a small ring at the top where oil has gathered. That can be removed. The third has good color and body, and your hand knows it before your mind names it. There is comfort in these morning judgments because they are small and honest. Nothing in the room asks you to pretend. The glue is clear or it is not. The cloth is clean or it is not. The smell is sound or it is not. A job like this can be tiring, but its truths are close at hand, held in a jar, felt through a rag, heard in the changing note of a stream. We prepare the day's first transfer. A clean pail is placed below the tap, and you check its bottom for any dark speck. The tap is wiped, the vessel is steadied, and the flow begins. The sound is familiar, a warm thread striking tin. It begins thin, then steadies. You watch the color as closely as if you were pouring medicine. The slightest cloudiness near the end tells you when to stop before the settled layer below is disturbed. The raw material side of the trade is nearby, even if the clarifier works after the first boiling. Barrels of fish skins and trimmings may have arrived from processors who knew the value of clean handling. The colder months help preserve them, while warmer weather demands speed and care. You can smell when a barrel has been kept too long. No amount of later gentleness can fully rescue bad beginning material, and the clarifier knows this without saying much. In Oslo, with the fjord close and fishing routes feeding the city's trades, fish was not only food, it became oil, meal, fertilizer, leather dressing, and glue. The clarifying room belongs to that larger habit of using what the sea provided. We stand in one small corner of it, where usefulness is extracted softly, strained patiently, and sent back into the city in tins and barrels. It is ordinary and it is intricate. You may hear the boiling room before you see anything from it. A deeper bubbling, a heavier steam, the scrape of a shovel or paddle, and voices made thick by heat. That is where the fish parts are washed and simmered. Not fiercely if the work is well managed, but long enough for collagen to dissolve into the water. Collagen is only a word, but in the room it means body, tack, and the hidden strength that lets glue hold. The clarifier receives what that earlier stage releases. It is not beautiful at first. The liquor can be grayish, brownish, uneven, and burdened with fine matter. It may carry oil, scale, and fragments too small for casual straining. Yet we do not look at it with distaste. We look at it as a worker looks at unfinished material. The point is not what it is now. The point is what patient treatment can make available within it. A fresh, rough batch arrives in a covered container, and the room changes at once. The smell grows fuller, more fishy, warmer, less settled. Steam beads on the underside of the lid when it is lifted. The surface below shows flecks and small islands of foam. You note the color, then the temperature, then the feel of the ladle as it moves through the liquid. Every beginning has its own weight. We line up the first coarse filters. These are not for perfection. They remove what is large enough to catch early, saving the finer cloths for later. The rough liquid moves through slowly, leaving behind pale bits, dark specks, and a soft mass that looks unpromising but tells you the filter is doing its duty. The smell rises as the liquid spreads. Warm air touches the face, dampens the eyelashes, and settles into the collar again. A younger worker might want to press the filter to make it go faster. You know better. Press too hard, and fine matter is forced through. Let gravity work, and the liquid gives up its burden more cleanly. This patience is not laziness. It is method. We stand beside the frame and listen to the falling drops gather into a stream, then slow again, then stop when the cloth has done enough. The waste from the coarse filter is scraped away with a wooden blade. It lands in a tub with a soft, heavy sound. The blade itself must be rinsed before it touches anything else. You have learned pathways in the room, clean to clean, rough to rough, waste to waste. Cross them carelessly, and the day becomes harder. Keep them distinct, and the work feels almost orderly enough to hum beneath the breath. As the morning grows stronger, we move deeper into the repeated cycle of heating, skimming, filtering, and resting, while the Oslo harbor carries its own quieter rhythm beyond the walls. The heat of the vats is steady now, and the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier works in shirt sleeves while cold still lingers outside. Moisture gathers in the hair at the temples. The hands are warm, then wet, then warm again. A paddle rests across two hooks, its handle polished by years of palms. When you take it down, it fits the hand with the familiarity of a stair rail in the dark. Stirring is done only when needed. Too much movement keeps impurities suspended. Too little may let warmth spread unevenly. The paddle goes in at an angle, then moves slowly along the curve of the vessel. You feel resistance through the wood, a soft drag that tells you the liquid has body. No one watching from the doorway would see much happening, yet your hand is reading the batch with each turn. Foam gathers near the edge in pale patches. Some foam is harmless, some carries impurities. You skim what should be taken and leave what should be left, because waste can hide inside zeal. The skimmer is shallow and broad, with a thin lip. It slips under the surface, lifts, pauses, and tilts. Drops fall back with a quiet patter. The removed foam settles in a side bowl, dull and cooling. The smell of the batch changes with heat. At first it is raw and broad, then rounder, then slightly sweet, like a stockpot that has passed beyond cooking into industry. You breathe through it without grimacing. This is your room. This is your material. The scent may cling, but it also tells you whether the batch is sound. In such work, the nose is not separate from the hand or eye. We add warm water to rinse a vessel that will receive the next filtered portion. The water strikes metal and sends up a cleaner steam. You swirl it, pour it away, and inspect the bottom. A single dark fiber lies near the seam. You remove it with a cloth, rinse again, and only then place the vessel under the filter. That extra half-minute saves the batch from a speck that would later float in the wrong jar. There is no bright line between skill and habit here. The skill became habit because it had to be used every day. You do not decide anew where to put the ladle after every use. It goes where it belongs. You do not wonder whether to rinse the cloth after a slow run. You rinse it. We can feel how the repeated gestures make a kind of shelter, a low roof under which the mind rests. The factory may have a foreman, and he may step in with a ledger or a question. How much from yesterday? How many tins ready? Which batch for the cabinet maker's order? The conversation is practical and brief. Voices remain low, not out of reverence, but because the room itself makes loud talk feel out of place. Steam presses sounds down. The work has its own volume, and everyone inside it adjusts. The Clarifier's clothes carry marks that would be difficult to explain elsewhere. A sleeve has a pale amber smear. The apron is stiff where drops dried overnight. The cuffs are darker from rinsing. Your boots show grey streaks from the floor. These are not signs of carelessness. They are the visible grammar of the trade, the record of standing close to warm vessels and moving material from roughness toward use. By late morning, the first filtered batch is ready for a longer rest. You pour it into a settling vessel through a final coarse cloth, then cover it enough to keep dust away while allowing heat to leave slowly. The cover sits imperfectly because most working things are imperfect but serviceable. A gap lets steam escape. It drifts upward, touches a cooler beam, and disappears. We mark the time. In the notebook, the pencil leaves another plain line. Started settling before noon. Good flow. Slight foam. The words are spare because the work itself holds the detail. Still, those lines matter. If tomorrow's batch behaves poorly, someone can look back. If a customer praises a clear lot, the shop can remember what was done. Memory becomes a tool when it is written down carefully. The quiet human life of the room continues in small exchanges. Someone passes you a clean rag before you ask. Someone moves a bucket out of the walking path. Someone leaves a little coffee in the pot and does not make a speech about it. In workrooms like this, kindness often appears as practical attention. We notice it because it fits the place, modest and useful. When your hands pause, you may look toward the window and see the harbor in pieces. A mast, a roofline, a gull standing on a crate, a strip of water dulled by weather. Oslo in the 1930s is not a picture postcard from this angle. It is a working edge, damp, busy, and necessary. That suits the Clarifier. He is not outside the city's life. He is one of its quiet joints. By midday, the body asks for food, and the work changes tempo without stopping, as the vats rest and the Clarifier takes his meal beside the steady warmth of the room. The noon break of a 1930s Oslo fish glue Clarifier is not far from the work. You may sit on a bench by the wall, close enough to hear the vessels and smell the batches, with your lunch opened on paper or cloth. The bread is dense, the butter firm if the day is cold, and the coffee is strong enough to stand up to the room. You eat slowly because the body has already found a steady pace. The first bite tastes partly of lunch and partly of the air. That is how workrooms are. They season everything lightly, whether you invite them or not. You wipe your fingers before touching the bread, but a faint glue smoothness remains. It is not unpleasant exactly. It is simply present. We sit with that, as workers have always sat with the traces of their trades around them. Conversation, if it comes, may be about weather, tram delays, a cousin's job, rent, coal, fish prices, or the stubbornness of a particular batch. Nothing needs to be polished. The voices move in and out of the steam. Someone laughs softly, not loudly enough to disturb the hour. Someone chews in silence. Someone closes his eyes for a moment, listening to the pipes settle and the harbor calling beyond the wall. Food in such a room is practical comfort. It warms from the inside after a morning spent near damp heat that somehow never fully warms the bones. The bench is hard, the wall at your back is cool through your shirt, a spoon taps the rim of a tin, coffee darkens the lip of a mug. These are small things, but small things become large when a life repeats them daily. After eating, you fold the paper carefully, if it can be used again, or place it aside where it will not touch the clean tools. The room does not allow careless mixtures. Lunch belongs away from filters. Waste belongs away from finished glue. Clean cloth belongs away from the floor. We begin to see that the Clarifier's whole day is a quiet map of boundaries, and peace comes from keeping them. The afternoon begins with a look at the resting vessels. Some have cleared beautifully. Some are still troubled. The clearer ones seem almost luminous when the lid is lifted and light finds them. A faint amber glow rises through steam, and you feel a small satisfaction that does not need words. The troubled ones will have their time. No batch is scolded. It is only worked with, according to what it shows. You draw from one vessel with a siphon, keeping the lower end above the sediment. The tube must be clean, warmed enough that the liquid does not seize inside it, and held steady. The first pull takes care. Once the flow begins, it continues with a gentle obedience. The receiving pail fills without splashing. Your hand holds the tube in place, and your eyes measure the level dropping in the tank. A siphon is a simple thing, but in a clarifying room it feels almost elegant. It moves the clear middle without stirring what should remain below. You can feel the value of that quiet transfer. The best work often finds a way to move without disturbance. We watch the liquid pass from one place to another, and the room seems to approve by staying calm. When the flow nears the sediment line, you stop early. There is always a temptation to take more. A little more product, a little less waste. But too much greed clouds the whole. The Clarifier knows that restraint can save more than it leaves behind. The last cloudy portion is marked for reworking or disposal, depending on its condition. Even the decision to stop is a kind of craft. The sediment left behind is scraped after the clear portion is removed. It has the thickness of soft clay and the smell of everything the batch could not keep. You do not linger over it, but you do not rush it either. The scraper follows the bottom. Warm rinse water loosens the corners. The waste tub receives another dull load. Then the vessel is washed, because tomorrow's clarity begins in today's emptied tank. As the afternoon settles into its long middle, we turn toward the more delicate finishing, where the Oslo fish glue clarifier prepares the clearest liquor for storage and sale. The clearest liquor moves differently from the rough morning batch. It flows with fewer interruptions, a smoother surface, and a quieter smell. In the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier's hands, it is close to finished, but not beyond detention. Finished things can still be spoiled. So you treat it gently, like a clean shirt in a room full of soot, or a letter written carefully before the ink has dried. The final filter is finer, and the cloth is handled almost tenderly. It is inspected against the light, because a small tear would undo too much. You stretch it evenly, secure it, and wet it with clean, warm water. The first portion is sometimes returned, because filters can shed traces or settle into place as the flow begins. After that, the stream runs clearer. You can see the difference in the way light sits inside it. This final filtration has a sound like a quiet indoor rain. Drops gather, merge, and fall. The receiving vessel answers with low, rounded notes. If the room is otherwise still, you can hear each change in pace. A fast stream is not always better. A slow one may mean the cloth is catching what it should. You stand close, adjusting nothing unless the material asks for it. A sample is taken from the finished flow. The glass is warm, and condensation clears where your thumb touches it. You hold it near the window, then against a white tile or pale board if one is kept for the purpose. Color matters because customers learn to trust a certain look. Too dark may suggest rough handling. Too cloudy suggests poor clarification. Too pale may still be useful, but it must match what was promised. The viscosity, the thickness, is felt in the pour. You tip the sample and count by instinct, not numbers spoken aloud, watching the liquid coat the glass and slide back. Fish glue must be workable. It should spread where brushed, hold where joined, and remain dependable in the conditions expected of it. We do not need to make the explanation complicated. A glue that behaves well is remembered. A glue that surprises the user is not forgiven quickly. In this trade, the industrial and the intimate sit close together. A barrel may go to a workshop. A tin may go to a small shopkeeper. A little of this batch may help bind a book, mend a chair, label a bottle, or repair an instrument case. The clarifier does not see those finished objects, yet his patience enters them. That is a quiet thought, and we hold it lightly. The containers stand ready. Metal tins have a hollow coldness before filling, and barrels smell of wood, old storage, and faint resin. Each must be clean. Each must be dry where dryness is needed and warm enough where warmth helps filling. You check the rim, the inside, the lid, the mark. The finished glue is drawn or poured in a steady line. It settles with a glossy surface, reflecting rafters in a wavering amber shape. When a tin is filled, you leave the proper space at the top. Liquids need room. Warm contents may change as they cool. The lid is fitted, pressed, or sealed, according to the container. A cloth wipes the edge until no sticky line remains. The label is applied straight enough to be read easily. It might carry the shop name, the grade, the weight, and the batch mark. Plain paper, plain ink, useful information. There is beauty in such plainness. Not decorative beauty, but the beauty of something prepared for use. We see it in the lined tins, the marked barrels, the cleaned ladles, the samples in order, and the cloths drying again after service. The clarifying room becomes less chaotic as the finished containers gather. The day's uncertainty has been drawn into a row of objects that can be counted, moved, sold, and trusted. A worker with a handcart may come to take filled tins to storage. The wheels squeak slightly. The cart's wooden bed is worn smooth in places and splintered in others. You help lift, feeling the weight shift through your hands and into your shoulders. The tins knock lightly against one another. Their warmth comes through the metal. They leave the room carrying the day's work in silence. Storage has its own smell, cooler and less wet than the clarifying room. Shelves, barrels, crates, paper labels, and old dust mingle there. The glue must be kept from heat that would spoil it, cold that would trouble handling, and dirt that would shame the maker. We place the containers where they belong. The row looks modest, but each tin holds hours of watching, skimming, settling, filtering, washing, and waiting. The afternoon light slants now, catching motes in the air. The room is quieter because much of the moving work is done, but quiet does not mean finished. There are surfaces to clean, notes to make, samples to compare, and rough liquor to prepare for tomorrow. You feel the day's pattern curling back toward its beginning. The work is circular, and the circle is kind when followed well. And as the last filled tins are carried from the room, we return to the benches and vessels where tomorrow's clarity is being prepared from today's still clouded remains. The leftover portions are not ignored by the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier. Some can be filtered again. Some can be blended if their character allows it. Some must be rejected because forcing usefulness from poor material would only carry trouble forward. You learn to know the difference. It is not wasteful to discard what would harm the finished glue. It is wasteful to pretend a poor batch is sound. The reworking vessel is smaller, and its contents are less handsome. The liquid may be darker, with a tired look after the best portion has been drawn away. Still, there may be value left in it. You warm it gently and give it another chance to settle. A small amount of clean water may help loosen what has thickened. The paddle moves slowly, and the smell rises stronger than before. Reworking asks for humility. It reminds the clarifier that not every batch becomes fine. Some become serviceable. Some become low grade. Some become nothing worth selling. The goal is not perfection in every vessel. The goal is honest handling. We stand with that plain truth as the darker liquor warms, and we do not dress it in grand words. It is enough to treat the material fairly. The filter for reworked liquor is not the best cloth, unless the batch proves worthy of it. Tools are matched to purpose. The room has a hierarchy known by touch and stain. Fine cloths are kept cleaner. Coarse ones bear rougher marks. Old ones serve where their wear will not matter. You reach for the right one without ceremony. The cloth has a small patch near one corner, stitched by someone who wanted another week of use from it. The patched cloth tells us something about the decade, too. In the 1930s, care with materials was not only a virtue. It was often a necessity. Workplaces mended, reused, saved, adapted, and stretched supplies when they could. The clarifier's room reflects that habit in repaired handles, sharpened scrapers, relabeled jars, and shelves built from wood that had another life before this one. Nothing is romanticized. It is simply how people made things last. You pour the reworked liquor and watch it labor through the cloth. It moves more slowly, and the residue gathers quickly. The smell is heavier. The color below is still dark, but clearer than it was. This batch may not become the finest fish glue, yet it may serve where clarity is less visible. We let it be what it can be. There is rest in not asking every material to become more than itself. The waste tub is fuller now and must be taken away. It is heavy, awkward, and not pleasant, but the path to disposal is part of the room's order. You lift with another worker if needed. The tub's rim is slippery, so hands are wiped first. The contents shift with a dull movement. Cold air from the yard meets the warm smell when the door opens, and for a moment everything is sharper. Outside, the yard has puddles, crates, and the practical clutter of a working place. The ground may be packed dirt, stone, or worn boards near the threshold. You empty what must be emptied according to the shop's arrangement, keeping waste away from clean water and clean vessels. Then the tub is rinsed. The rinse water clears a little and runs off, taking with it the day's least useful part. Returning inside, the room feels warmer than before. Your glasses, if you wear them, might fog at the edges. Your hands find the familiar rag. We are back in the amber air, among vessels that still need attention. The contrast between outside and inside makes the room feel almost sheltering, despite the smell, the damp, and the work waiting in every corner. A late sample from the reworked batch is marked separately. Its label is simple. No one will confuse it with the clearer lot. Honest labels are another form of clarity. A customer may accept a lower grade for the right purpose, but only if it is named correctly. The clarifier's trust lives not just in what he removes from the glue, but in what he refuses to hide. By now, the day's warmth has sunk into your clothes again. The shoulders ache more plainly. The hands are clean enough for work and too marked for leisure. You stretch your fingers once, then return to the bench. The body is tired, but the room has entered its last productive quiet. There is something almost gentle about this hour, when the largest demands have passed and only careful endings remain. As dusk approaches again, we stay near the shelves of samples, where the Oslo fish glue clarifier reads the day's history through glass, light, and small differences of color. The sample shelf is a modest archive. A 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier may not use that word, but the shelf remembers. Jars from different batches stand in rows, some recent, some kept long enough for comparison. Their labels curl at the corners. The glass catches dust. Inside, the glue holds its amber, brown, honey, or tea-colored tones. We look along the row, and the day becomes visible in small transparent columns. You take yesterday's sample and place it beside today's best. The difference is slight, but slight differences are the clarifier's trade. One is warmer in color, one is cleaner near the bottom, one holds a faint haze when turned against the window. The eye learns to compare without impatience. This is not a contest, it is a way of knowing what the room has done. A spoon or glass rod may be used to test the cooled surface. The glue clings, draws, breaks, and leaves a shining line. Between thumb and finger, A cool drop may become tacky, then stringy, then firm. The sensation is peculiar, intimate, and useful. It is not enough to see the glue. You must feel the promise it makes. Will it grip? Will it spread? Will it remain stable long enough to serve? The record book comes down again. Its cover is warped slightly by damp seasons. The pages smell of paper, pencil, and the room's general breath. You write the batch marks, the number of containers, the clarity note, and anything the next morning's worker should know. Perhaps you are the next morning's worker. Still, you write it. A tired mind is grateful for yesterday's careful hand. There is a quiet fellowship between past and future selves in such notes. You leave yourself a path through the next day's uncertainty. Needs fine filter before filling. Watch lower sediment. Good after long rest. These short lines carry the voice of the worker forward. We can feel how practical writing becomes a kind of kindness, not sentimental, but real. The lamps are lit if daylight has faded too much. Electric bulbs may be present in many Oslo workplaces by this time, though their light can be harsh compared with the window. A bulb over the bench makes the jars shine differently, and you remember not to trust it fully for color. Still, it helps with labels, tools, and cleaning. Shadows gather beneath the tanks, soft and gray. The sound of the city outside changes again. Fewer carts, more footsteps, a tram bell further off, a door closing. Perhaps rain begins, faint on the roof or against the window, making the harbor smell rise from the stones. Rain suits the clarifying room. It belongs to damp work, to softened fibers, to steam, to the slow passage of liquid through cloth. You wipe the sample jars before setting them back. Fingerprints can make a clear sample look doubtful. Dust can hide the truth. The rag moves around each jar in a circular motion, then along the base. The glass squeaks faintly when clean. This small sound is satisfying. It says the eye will have a fair chance tomorrow. A shelf label is adjusted, and one jar is moved forward where it can be checked early. The motion is tiny, but it orders the next day. Much of working life is made of these small preparations, nearly invisible until they are absent. When they are absent, everything snags. When they are present, the day opens more smoothly than anyone remembers to thank. The vats are lower now, the bench clearer, the pails inverted to dry. A clarifier can read a room's condition almost at a glance. Clean tools, covered tanks, marked samples, rinsed cloths, waste removed, floor brushed near the filters. Each detail rests in its place. We stand at the center and feel the quiet relief of order returning after long use. Yet the room is not sterile. It remains human. A drop has dried near a handle. A bench edge is worn by years of leaning. A rag has been patched twice. The floor keeps old stains beneath new washing. The air holds a smell no scrubbing fully removes. This is the difference between clean and untouched. The clarifier does not need untouched. He needs clean enough for honest work. When we think of industry, we may imagine noise first. But this corner of Oslo's fish glue trade is governed by quieter sounds. Cloth dripping, pencil scratching, pails settling, steam sighing, a lid placed carefully, boots shifting on wet boards. These sounds do not demand attention. They accept it, and in accepting it, they make the listener slower. And when the evening work is nearly set in order, we follow the clarifier's thoughts back through the seasons, because this same room feels different under winter frost, spring rain, summer heat, and autumn dark. In winter, the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier arrives with cold hands and a face tightened by wind from the fjord. Snow may be packed along the street edges, grey where carts have passed. The harbour ropes are stiff. Breath rises from people and horses alike. Inside the factory, the first warmth feels almost generous. You stand near the steam line without touching it, letting feeling return to the fingers before the day's wet work begins. Winter can help preserve raw material, but it makes everything else more deliberate. Cloths dry slowly unless placed well. Water in unheated corners bites at the skin. Metal tools feel colder when first lifted. The glue thickens faster if a vessel stands too long away from heat. You learn to keep the flow warm enough, to prepare containers before they are needed, and to move with the season rather than against it. The windows frost at their edges, and daylight enters with a milky softness. A sample held up to winter light looks different from the same sample in June. The clarifier remembers this. He turns the jar, waits, and judges carefully. Outside, a tram passes with a muffled grind. Inside, steam beads on the glass and runs down through fern-like traces of thaw. There is a particular comfort to lunch in winter. Coffee warms the hands before the mouth. Bread feels denser, more necessary. The room's smell, though strong, seems less heavy than in summer because the cold beyond the door keeps it contained. You may stand at the threshold for a moment during break, letting cold air clear the head, then return willingly to the vat warmth. In spring, rain changes the yard. Mud appears where frost had held the ground firm. The harbor smells more open, with wet rope, seaweed, fish scales, and thawing earth mingling near the doors. The clarifying room feels damp even before the first vat is opened. Cloth needs attention. Mildew is an enemy of trust. You hang everything with space around it and check the rails by touch. Spring fish runs and market rhythms may change what arrives. The batches carry their own hints of season, though not in any poetic way at first. Freshness, oil content, handling, and speed all matter. You notice which barrels behave well, which suppliers send cleaner skins, which deliveries require more skimming. We are still in the same room, but the world outside keeps entering through raw material, air, and water. Summer is the hardest for smell. Warmth presses down, and the room becomes heavy by mid-morning. Steam no longer feels friendly. Your shirt clings early. Flies must be discouraged, lids kept properly placed, waste removed quickly, and cloths washed with extra care. Nothing may linger too long. The clarifier works calmly, but calm is not neglect. In summer, calm includes vigilance. The fish, glue liquor, may sour if handled poorly, and the nose becomes a stern companion. You smell each batch, not with alarm, but with steady attention. Sweet marine warmth is one thing, sour spoilage is another. The difference may be slight at first. You catch it early if you are present. We can feel how the room asks for honesty again, because pretending not to smell trouble only makes the trouble larger. Autumn brings darker mornings and a steadier chill. The work lamps matter earlier. Rain darkens coats on their pegs. Leaves may be carried into the yard on wet boots, sticking near the threshold before someone sweeps them away. The harbor seems lower in color, more iron than silver. Inside, the amber glue looks warmer by contrast, and the vats feel like small reservoirs of stored daylight. In autumn, the body settles into routine after summer's heaviness. The air is easier. Cloth dries more predictably if the stove is steady. The workday feels enclosed, with morning and evening both dim around it. You may arrive in darkness and leave in darkness, carrying the room's smell through streets lit by lamps and shop windows. The clarifier's life fits itself around that seasonal narrowing. Through every season, the basic gestures remain: skim, settle, draw, filter, test, record, wash, cover, wait. We do not say them sharply, because in the room they are not sharp. They are connected by steam, footsteps, glances, and the feel of material changing slowly under care. The repetition does not flatten the year. It lets the year show itself in small differences. And as the seasons pass through the same wooden doors, we return once more to the ordinary day, where the clarifier's tools wait with the patient familiarity of old companions. The tools of a 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier are not complicated, but they are known deeply. A ladle is more than a ladle when its balance tells you whether your wrist will tire. A skimmer is more than a skimmer when its edge slips properly under oil without taking too much good liquid. A cloth is more than cloth when its weave decides how clear the batch may become. We handle each one with practical respect. The wooden paddles are darkened near the ends from years of immersion. Their handles are smoother than their shafts, polished by palms, steam, and use. If a paddle cracks, it can harbor residue, so you inspect it. You run your thumb along the grain and feel for a place where glue might lodge and sour. The wood smells faintly of warm water and old work. Metal ladles hang from hooks, each with a slightly different bowl. One pours cleanly, one is better for sampling, one has a dent that makes it less favored but not useless. You know them by weight. When you lift the sampling ladle, the handle tips in a familiar way and the hand adjusts without thought. Such knowledge rarely appears in manuals, but it shapes the day. The filters are frames, cloths, clamps and patience. Their simplicity hides their importance. A poorly set cloth wrinkles, leaks, or lets sediment pass along an edge. You smooth it carefully, pressing out folds with wet fingers. The cloth cools the fingertips at first, then warms as liquid reaches it. Its weave darkens, tightens, and begins to hold back what the eye no longer wants in the glue. Thermometers, if used, must be read without fogging the glass too badly. You wipe, lift, wait, and read. The number matters, though we speak it in the old unhurried way, as a range learned by practice as much as by mark. Too high is rough. Too low is stubborn. Just right is a warmth you come to feel in the way steam rises and the ladle moves. The notebook is a tool, so is the pencil, so is the clean rag kept for rims and jars, so is the shelf where samples stand where they will not be knocked. The clarifier's intelligence is spread throughout the room, resting in arrangements that reduce mistakes. We notice this because a well-kept workspace is a kind of thinking made visible. Even the buckets have their personalities. One is for clean rinse water. One is for rough washing. One is never used near finished glue. Marks, dents, and habits keep them separate. A careless stranger might see only old pails. You see a system. In trades like this, confusion is not always loud. Sometimes it begins with one bucket in the wrong place. The broom stands near the door, bristles worn unevenly from damp floors. It gathers grit, fibers, dried flakes, and the day's small evidence. Sweeping is done when the floor is dry enough to be swept and washed when washing is needed. You learn not to raise dust near open vessels. Even cleaning has a timing. We move through these decisions softly because they have become part of the room's pulse. There is a repair shelf somewhere, with twine, patches, spare hooks, a small hammer, perhaps nails sorted into a tin. The clarifier may fix what he can before calling for help. A loose hook matters if it drops a ladle. A rough edge matters if it tears cloth. A wobbly bench matters if its samples stand on it. The quiet trade depends on many small steadinesses. You may wrap a cloth strip around a handle that has grown too hot near the vessel. You may sand a splinter from a paddle. You may tighten a clamp with hands that know exactly how much force is enough. None of this appears on the finished product label. Yet each act supports the clarity inside the tin. We see again that the visible result is only the last page of a much longer book. As the tools are checked and set back in place, we move toward the people who work around the clarifier, because even solitary patience sits within a small human world. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier may spend long stretches alone beside a vat, but he is not truly isolated. The boiling workers, the washer of raw material, the barrel handler, the foreman, the bookkeeper, the cart driver, and the customer at the far end all touch the same chain. You hear them before you see them. A barrel rolls, a ledger closes, a hand cart squeaks. A voice asks whether the clear batch is ready. A good working relationship is often made from timing. The boiling room sends liquor when the clarifying room can receive it. The storage room takes tins when they are sealed and wiped. The bookkeeper needs marks that match the containers. The driver needs loads that will not leak. Each person's care protects the next person from trouble. We can feel how the factory is held together by modest dependencies. There may be disagreements, of course, but our attention stays with the quiet daily fabric. A worker complains that a barrel arrived poorly cleaned. Another says the filters are wearing thin. Someone asks for more labels before the afternoon. These are not dramas. They are the small frictions of shared work, rubbed smooth by habit, necessity, and the knowledge that tomorrow everyone will return. The clarifier's reputation grows slowly. He is trusted if his batches are steady, his notes readable, his vessels clean, and his judgments fair. He is not praised every hour. Trust in workrooms rarely arrives as praise. It arrives when others stop worrying about your part. They hand you the batch, and know it will be dealt with. There is dignity in that quiet confidence. A young helper might stand beside you, learning to see. At first, he sees only brown liquid and steam. You show him the ring of oil, the lower cloud, the way a clear stream shines at the edge. You let him hold the ladle and feel the drag. You tell him not to stir from the bottom unless he means to wake the sediment. He nods, perhaps too quickly, and learns more slowly than he expects. Teaching here is repetitive because the work is repetitive. You say the same thing many times in different ways. Wait before drawing, rinse before filling, look in daylight, smell before heating. Do not trust a clean-looking cloth until you have held it open. The helper begins to understand when his hands start correcting themselves before you speak. We watch that change without ceremony. The workers may bring stories from other parts of Oslo. A new building going up, a relative leaving for another town, a shop closing, a tram line crowded in the rain. Such talk enters the clarifying room and softens there. It does not turn the room into a lively hall. It becomes another low layer, like the sound of pipes or the tapping of drops. In a difficult decade, wages, prices and security may sit behind many conversations. The 1930s were not easy for all workers, and Oslo carried its share of uncertainty. But in this script, we stay with the daily routine, not because hardship did not exist, but because the Clarifier's working hours were filled with immediate tasks. Heat this, strain that, watch the jar, clean the vessel. Work often narrows the world to what can be done next. That narrowing can be a comfort, especially in a room where materials answer directly. A cloudy batch does not debate. A clean filter does not boast. A warm vessel does not ask for more than attention. You may carry larger worries in your coat pocket, but while the ladle is in your hand, the work asks for the part of you that can be steady. The cart driver comes near the end of the day, perhaps stamping cold from his boots. He smells of outside air, horse leather or engine oil, damp wool, and street dust. He asks where the filled tins are. You point, help lift, and remind him which ones must remain upright. The exchange is brief, ordinary, and necessary. The glue leaves the room through another pair of hands. When visitors from a buying workshop come, they may speak of clarity, price, delivery, and consistency. They may open a tin, smell it, test a little between finger and thumb, and nod. The Clarifier stands nearby, not needing to fill the air. The glue speaks by its body. The jar speaks by its light. The work has already made its argument. And as those other voices fade from the doorway, we return to the stillness beside the vat, where the Clarifier's own attention remains the truest companion of the day. Attention, in the life of a 1930s Oslo fish glue Clarifier, is not tense. It is loose enough to last. You cannot stare fiercely at a tank for hours and call that skill. Instead, you return to it again and again, noticing changes without exhausting yourself. You look, then wash a tool. You smell, then write a note. You listen, then adjust the heat. The mind moves in a circle, always coming back. This kind of attention has texture. It feels like a hand resting on a rail while climbing familiar stairs. It feels like knowing the next turn in a path before the lamp reaches it. It feels like trusting the body to remember what the mind might forget when tired. We stand with you in that rhythm, and the room grows slower because our noticing grows slower. The glue itself rewards gradual attention. At first, all you see is cloud. Then you see layers. Then you see differences inside the layers. A clearer band near the top, a duller column below, a skin of oil spreading like a thin winter rainbow, a fleck that rises instead of sinking. These small signs become familiar, and familiarity becomes calm. The air is warm near the vats and cooler near the door. Your body learns the room by temperature. The bench edge presses against your thigh in the same place each day. The handle of the skimmer has a slight ridge where the thumb rests. The drying cloths brush your shoulder if you pass too close. Even in near darkness you could find what you need by touch. Sound guides you too. A filter that runs well has a steady note. A clogged one breaks into irregular drops. A vessel heating too quickly may mutter and tick in a way that asks for the valve. A pail placed badly rattles when the stream hits its side. You adjust it. and the sound rounds out. The ear becomes another quiet tool. Smell, though strong, is not simply endured. It is read. The difference between fresh marine warmth and stale sourness matters. The difference between clean wet cloth and cloth that dried poorly matters. The difference between coal smoke from the stove and scorching residue on metal matters. You do not need dramatic reactions. A small pause, a closer breath, and the work changes course. Sight, touch, sound, smell, warmth, weight, all gather into judgment. That is why the job cannot be understood only from a recipe. A written instruction may say to heat gently, but the clarifier learns what gentle feels like in the wrist and face. It may say to filter until clear, but clear is known against daylight, through glass, after settling, and beside memory of yesterday's batch. We let the afternoon lengthen around this kind of knowledge. It is quiet knowledge, almost shy. It does not announce itself as expertise. It appears when a batch is saved before spoiling, when a customer receives glue that behaves well, when a young helper stops making a repeated mistake. The clarifier's skill is not loud because the material itself asks for low voices. There are moments when nothing seems to happen. The tank rests. The filter drips slowly. The sample cools. The cloth dries. To an impatient eye, this is empty time. To the clarifier, it is working time of another kind. Waiting is active when you know what you are waiting for. You are giving gravity, temperature, and fibers space to do their parts. During such waiting, the room softens. The bench is wiped. The pencil is sharpened with a small knife. A loose label is pressed flat. A cup is rinsed. You might stand near the window and let your gaze rest on the harbor without chasing any thought. The body remains available to the work, but the mind loosens. This is where sleepiness can enter the listener too, gently and without hurry. The day continues like that, not empty, not crowded, but held between tasks. A little more heat, a little more rest, another pass-through cloth, another jar against the light. We are still with the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier, and the work has not changed its voice. It speaks in amber, steam, and softened footsteps. As the room settles into the late afternoon once more, we follow one particular batch from cloudy arrival toward its clearer resting place, staying close to each small transformation. This batch enters the clarifying room with a grey-gold color and a stubborn haze. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier notes it at once, though without alarm. Some liquors resist the first pass. They hold their fine matter as if unwilling to let the water clear. You have seen this before. We bring it to a steady warmth, skim the surface, and give it time enough to reveal what kind of stubbornness it has. The first coarse straining removes visible fragments, but the haze remains. The liquid below the cloth looks better only at the edges. You pour a sample into glass and hold it up. Light enters, then loses itself. That tells you the trouble is fine and suspended. The batch will need patient settling, perhaps more than one rest, perhaps a gentler warming before the next filtration. You cover the vessel and let it stand. The room continues around it. Other tasks move forward, yet this batch remains in your awareness, like a pot simmering on a back stove. After a while, you return and lift the lid. The top has gathered a slight sheen. You skim it. Beneath, the liquid has improved, not greatly, but enough to invite the next step. The siphon draws from the clearer upper middle. You hold it steady and watch the line descend. The receiving pail fills with a liquor that is still dim, but no longer dull. This is progress of the kind the clarifier trusts. Not sudden brightness, not rescue by force, a gradual yielding. The lower portion is left behind with its burden of fine sediment, and the pail is carried to the next filter. The fine cloth accepts the first pour slowly. It darkens across its surface, then begins to drip. The drops are clearer than expected. You do not smile broadly, but perhaps the face eases. We notice that small easing because it belongs to the job. Satisfaction here is rarely a cheer. It is a breath released through the nose, a slight nod, a decision to continue. The cloth clogs sooner than with easier batches. You change it before the flow turns strained enough to push impurities through. The used cloth is rinsed in warm water, rubbed gently, inspected, and set aside for a fuller wash. The new cloth is fitted. The process begins again. This is where repetition becomes mercy, because no single pass has to do everything. Each pass does its share. After the second fine filtration, the sample jar looks almost clear. Almost is a useful word. It prevents haste. You cool the sample, then hold it against daylight. A slight haze remains near the bottom, but the body is good. The smell is clean enough. The color is warmer now, less gray. You mark it for overnight settling, not immediate filling. The batch has earned more time, and time may finish what force should not. We carry the vessel to its resting place. It is covered, labeled, and placed where it will cool slowly without being disturbed. The floorboard beneath it is level. The lid sits well. The note is written clearly. Tomorrow, this batch may be ready for final filtration. Tonight it needs quiet. The room understands that, or seems to, as steam thins around the covered shape. A listener half asleep might think of the batch as a thought settling in the mind. Cloud at first, then rest. Then a clearer middle drawn carefully away from what has sunk. We do not press the comparison too hard. The work itself is enough. But there is comfort in watching troubled material become more transparent through warmth, patience, and repeated care. The clarifier moves on. He cannot stand guard over one vessel forever. Other tools need washing. Other samples need checking. The day's records need finishing. Yet the covered batch holds a small promise for morning. That is common in this trade. You leave many things incomplete, not from neglect, but because completion sometimes requires a night of stillness. And as night begins to gather outside the Oslo windows again, the clarifying room grows quieter around its waiting vessels, its rinsed cloths, and its faint amber warmth. The waiting vessels do not sleep in any human way, but they hold the night with a steadiness that feels almost restful. Under their lids, the glue liquor cools by degrees, and the suspended flecks drift downward through the warm amber body. The room is darker now, with only a little light from a lamp near the door or from the pale city beyond the window. We stand quietly with the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier's work, after his hands have left it, and the materials continue their slow obedience. A covered tank makes a small sound as cooling metal tightens. A drip falls from a cloth and lands in the trough below. The air no longer steams as richly, though the smell remains in the walls, in the rails, in the old wood of the bench. It is fish, soap, coal, damp linen, and something sweet from the dissolved glue itself. The mixture might seem strange to a visitor, but to you, after a day here, it has become the scent of things settling into place. Outside, Oslo moves into evening with lamps along streets, dark shop windows, and footsteps softened by weather. The harbor water takes the last grey light and folds it under. A cart passes, then silence returns. Somewhere, a door closes hard enough for the sound to reach the factory yard. Inside the clarifying room, there is no answer except the slow shift of warmth, leaving the vats, and the faint pull of gravity doing work no one can hurry. In the covered batch we left for morning, the sediment gathers at the lowest point of the vessel. It does not fall like stones. It drifts, wanders, and surrenders. Fine particles meet one another and become heavy enough to sink. A thin skin gathers near the top, where oil and surface matter find their way upward. The middle grows clearer. This is the clarifier's hope, made physical, though he is not there to watch it. We can imagine his sleep that night, if sleep comes easily after factory warmth and street cold. The hands may still feel the shape of the ladle. The shoulders may remember lifting filled tins. The smell of the room may linger in the hair and collar, softened by home air and the scent of supper. A worker carries his trade in small ways after leaving, not because he wishes to, but because the body is faithful to what it has done. By dawn, frost or rain may be at the window, depending on the season. The factory yard waits with its barrels, wet boards, and quiet corners. The clarifying room is cooler now, and the vessels hold their contents like sealed thoughts. When the key turns again, the day begins not with a new story, but with the continuation of what the night has patiently prepared. We return with the clarifier, as if we too have slept near the edge of the work. And when the morning door opens, we go first to the batch that rested through the night, because the 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier knows that yesterday's patience must be read before today's effort begins. The lid lifts with a damp sound, and a pale breath rises from the vessel. The surface is still, carrying a faint film that catches the light in a dull rainbow sheen. You take the skimmer and draw it across with a movement so slow it barely seems to move. The film gathers at the lip, folds, and lifts away. Beneath it, the glue liquor is clearer than yesterday. We see this at once, and yet we still test it properly. A sample jar waits on the bench, rinsed and clean. You draw from the upper middle of the vessel, avoiding the top skin and the bottom sediment. The ladle fills with a warm amber liquid, not perfectly bright, but much improved. When it pours into the jar, it makes a soft, rounded sound. You wipe the outside glass with a clean rag and carry it to the window. Morning light enters through the liquid and comes out gentler on the other side. The haze that remained yesterday has thinned. A few fine flecks drift near the bottom, but the middle glows steadily. You turn the jar and let it rest. The flecks settle again. This batch is ready for one last careful filtration before it can join the finished stock. The decision is quiet, but it carries the pleasure of work rewarded. You write the note before memory is crowded by other tasks. The final filter is prepared with more care than speed. The cloth has dried overnight and must be softened before use. You dip it in clean warm water, wring it without twisting the weave harshly, and stretch it across the frame. The corners are secured evenly. Your fingertips feel for wrinkles. Any fold might become a hidden channel where clouded liquid slips through. We smooth the cloth until it lies obedient and plain. The first pour is small. It darkens the cloth, tests the edge, and shows whether the frame sits level. A few drops fall. Then, a steady thread. The receiving vessel below has been rinsed and warmed, because cold metal can thicken the glue too soon. The thread becomes a smooth fall. It lands with a soft tap that grows into a deeper note as the vessel fills. The sound is one of the morning's small assurances. A 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier does not leave a final filter unattended for long. He may turn to rinse a ladle or mark a pail, but his attention returns every few breaths. The flow tells him how the cloth is behaving. A widening wet patch may warn of clogging. A streak near the frame edge may hint at a poor seal. He corrects these things early, while they are still small. The filtered liquid looks cleaner in the vessel below, more continuous in color, less smoky at the edges. When you take a new sample, the jar seems lighter in the hand, though its weight is the same. That is only the mind answering the eye. Held against daylight, it shows a warm clarity, the sort that can be sold without apology. You set it beside the earlier sample, and the difference between yesterday and today becomes visible. There is a lesson in this comparison that the room teaches without a lecture. Some improvements cannot be achieved by doing more in the same hour. They need an interval, a night, a rest in which the material obeys its own slower laws. We have seen the batch grow clearer because it was not forced. The clarifier's skill was not only in touching it, but in knowing when to leave it alone. The finished vessel is moved toward filling. It is not a grand procession. One worker lifts one side, another steadies the handle, and the floorboards answer beneath their boots. The container is set on the filling bench, where tins stand ready. Each tin is checked by eye and hand. A dull spot inside is wiped. A rim is cleared. A lid is matched. Practical care surrounds the batch before it leaves the room. As this rested batch becomes finished glue, we move with it toward the packing bench, where the Oslo fish glue clarifier's quiet attention enters labels, lids, and rows of metal tins. The packing bench is drier than the vat side of the room, though nothing here is truly dry for long. It smells of paper labels, metal, glue, and old wood warmed by the nearby vessels. The tins wait in a line, their open mouths catching the light. You place them close enough for smooth work, but not so close that a spill can travel easily from one to another. Order is a form of calm. The first tin receives the glue in a steady stream. You do not fill from too high, because splashing brings bubbles and waste. The liquid falls cleanly and spreads across the bottom, rising with a glossy surface. Its warmth reaches through the metal. If you touch the side, you feel the stored heat of the batch, gentle but certain. We watch the level climb, then stop before the rim. The pause before lidding matters. Foam or bubbles can be skimmed if they appear. A speck can still be caught. The surface can be inspected one last time. The clarifier leans slightly, not dramatically, just enough to let the light skim the top. A tiny dark point appears near the edge. He removes it with the tip of a clean tool, wipes the tool, and checks again. Only then does the lid come down. A lid set badly can betray a good batch. It can leak, admit dirt, or make a customer doubt the maker. So you seat it evenly, pressing around the edge with measured force. The metal gives a small, satisfying sound. A cloth wipes the rim. The cloth is replaced before it becomes too sticky. The tin moves aside, and the next one takes its place. The rhythm settles into pour, inspect, lid, wipe, move. Labels may be brushed with paste or otherwise fixed, depending on the shop's habits. If paste is used, it has its own mild smell, familiar and papery beside the stronger fish glue air. You place the label straight, smoothing from the center outward, so no wrinkle traps moisture. The label might name fish glue, grade, weight, maker, and perhaps Oslo as the place of production. Plain letters carry the batch into the world. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier may not be the only person labeling, but his work is present in each mark. The grade must match the jar. The batch number must match the book. The container must match the order. A mistaken label can turn honest glue into a problem. We take care not because anyone is watching, but because the chain depends on these small accuracies. The filled tins gather in rows. Their sides shine dully in the factory light, and each holds a portion of the same warmed amber body. The row is quiet evidence that the day's cloudy beginning has been transformed into something saleable. A hand cart waits nearby, its wheels dark with old oil. When the tins are lifted onto it, they knock softly, metal against metal, and the sound travels beneath the benches. If barrels are used for a larger order, the work has a heavier mood. A barrel must be sound, clean, and well sealed. The inside may smell of wood and previous storage, so it must be judged carefully. You do not pour clear glue into a doubtful container. A barrel hoop is checked, a bung readied, and the filling is slower because the quantity deserves caution. The warmth rises from the opening in a fuller breath. Barrel filling asks for steadier posture. The stream is heavier, and the vessel answers with a deeper sound. The glue gathers inside where you cannot see every surface, so the preparation beforehand must be trusted. A splash on the rim is wiped immediately. The bung area is kept clean. When the filling is complete, the closure is made carefully, and the outside is wiped until it can be handled without tack. A good packing bench is a place of endings that are really beginnings. Once sealed, the glue becomes part of accounts, deliveries, storage shelves, and other workshops. The clarifier has brought it as far as his room can bring it, yet he still watches the tins leave, because a tipped container or sticky rim can undo care even after the batch is finished. The hand cart rolls slowly towards storage. We follow the cart a little way, hearing its squeak change as it crosses from damp floorboards to a firmer passage. The air cools outside the clarifying room. The smell of glue thins, replaced by wood, dust, paper, rope, and the faint mineral breath of the building. The tins sit close together, still warm under their labels. They look ordinary now, and that ordinariness is part of their success. When the load is placed in storage, the row is noted. The bookkeeper may make a mark. The cart returns empty, lighter, and louder over the boards. Back in the clarifying room, the bench shows traces of the packing work. A smear near the edge, a drop beneath where the stream paused, a label scrap stuck to a damp thumb. Nothing terrible, nothing neglected, just the room after use, asking to be restored. And as the packing bench is wiped clean, we turn toward the wider path of the glue, from the quiet Oslo workroom to the other trades that relied on its clear, humble strength. A 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier might never visit the small shops that use his finished product. Yet those places belong to the same story. Somewhere, a cabinet maker warms a little glue near a stove and brushes it along a joint. Somewhere, a bookbinder smooths paper overboard and presses it flat beneath weight. Somewhere, labels are fixed to bottles, boxes, or jars with a thin, even coat. The clarifier remains unseen, but his patience is there. Fish glue was valued in part because it could be used in cooler conditions than some heavier glues, and because it remained useful for delicate applications. For certain crafts that mattered. A worker did not always want a pot of glue kept hot all day, nor a material that set too quickly for careful adjustment. The glue from the Oslo clarifying room entered these quiet needs. It helped things adhere without calling attention to itself. We imagine a bookbinding bench, not as a departure from our topic, but as the far end of the clarifier's labor. The paper has a dry, fibrous smell. The boards are cut square. A brush moves over a surface, leaving a shine that will dull as it dries. If the glue is clear and clean, no dark speck mars the paper. If the body is right, the brush pulls smoothly. The clarifier's work has become someone else's ease. In a cabinet shop, the scent changes to wood shavings, varnish, and sawdust warmed by lamps. A joint is fitted, opened, glued, and closed again. Clamps bring the pieces together with patient pressure. The glue line should be thin and dependable. Too much impurity or poor strength would show later, perhaps as a weak joint or a stained edge. The clarifier never sees the chair or cabinet, but his standards travel there. There may be instrument repairers, box makers, pattern makers, and paper workers who know good glue by habit. They may not speak warmly of it unless it fails, because reliable materials often receive silence instead of praise. That silence is not empty. It means the tin opened properly, the glue smelled right, spread well, held fast, and did not trouble the day. The Oslo clarifier's quiet success becomes another worker's uninterrupted rhythm. Back in the clarifying room, this wider usefulness does not make the work grand. It makes it connected. You still wash the pails. You still skim the surface. You still scrape the sediment and hang the cloths. Yet perhaps, when a good batch shines in the jar, there is a small awareness that many hands will benefit from this clarity. We let that thought pass gently through the room and settle. The customers may send comments through orders rather than letters of praise. More of the clear grade. Same as last delivery. Too thin in cold weather. Good for labels. These remarks return to the shop and become part of the clarifier's practical knowledge. The next batch may be handled with those uses in mind. Industry speaks in such phrases, plain and tied to results. An order for a colder workshop might make thickness matter differently. A customer using the glue for paper might care more about color and specs. A furniture repairer might care about strength and tack. The clarifier cannot make every batch serve every purpose, but he can help sort and grade honestly. This is another kind of clarification, not of liquid, but of use. The labels, ledgers, and sample jars help keep that order. A clear batch for one trade, a darker batch for another, a lower grade for work, where appearance matters less. Waste is reduced when materials are matched well. Trust is built when promises stay modest and accurate. We can feel how the clarifier's quiet work continues beyond the filter into judgment, naming, and placement. The room itself holds evidence of these customers in small ways. A stack of requested tin sizes, a note pinned near the book, a returned container to be cleaned and reused, a special mark for a regular buyer. These signs are not decorative. They show the paths by which the glue leaves and returns in expectation. The clarifying room is both workshop and crossroads. Yet when the next rough batch arrives, all that distance collapses into immediate work again. The liquid is cloudy. The cloth must be ready. The heat must be steady. The smell must be judged. The clarifier does not stand dreaming over distant bookbinders while the vat needs skimming. Connection is held in the background while the hands return to what is directly before them. And as another order is marked in the ledger, we come back to the raw edge of the process, where fish skins, bones and trimmings begin their slow change toward glue. The beginning of fish glue is not clear or golden. It is wet, pale rough, and often cold when it arrives. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier may not handle every raw barrel, but he understands how those beginnings shape his later work. Skins that are cleaner give a cleaner liquor. Trimmings kept fresh give fewer sour notes. Bones and membranes prepared properly release their strength more evenly. Nothing starts in the filter. The raw material may arrive in barrels, crates, or tubs from fish processors, markets, or coastal suppliers. It smells of the sea in a stronger, more immediate way than the clarifying room. Salt, scale, skin, and cold flesh mingle with barrel wood and meltwater. In winter, the smell is sharp and contained. In summer, it spreads more quickly and demands action. Workers move the material toward washing before spoilage can gain a foothold. Washing is plain work, and it matters deeply. Cold water loosens blood, dirt, salt, and loose fragments. The sound is splashing, scraping, and the dull knock of material against tub sides. Hands grow cold, even in a room warmed by labor. The cleaner the wash, the less the clarifier must later remove as cloud, speck, or smell. We see again how one worker's care becomes another worker's easier day. Boiling or extraction must be controlled rather than violent. Too fierce a heat may darken or weaken the blue liquor. Too little heat may leave too much value behind in the material. The fish skins and bones soften, and the collagen within them passes into the water. In the room, this does not look like science. It looks like steam, softened scraps, a heavy smell, and a liquid slowly gaining body. The clarifier receives the extracted liquor after this rough transformation. It is not yet trustworthy. It carries the memory of everything it touched, good and bad. Tiny fragments remain suspended. Oil rides the surface. Sediment waits to fall if given time. The clarifier's craft begins where raw extraction ends, and his task is to separate usefulness from all that clouds it. Sometimes the incoming liquor tells a story of careful earlier work. It arrives warm, moderately clear, and free from heavy foam. Such a batch still needs attention, but it meets the clarifier halfway. Other times the liquor is dark, greasy, or stubbornly cloudy. Then the day grows longer. You do not complain much, because complaining will not clear it. You set the heat, prepare the filters, and begin. There is a humility in working downstream from raw material. You cannot undo everything that happened before. You can only improve what is possible. A clarifier who knows this is neither careless nor proud. He works within limits. He saves what can be saved, grades what must be graded, and rejects what would dishonor the shop. We stay close to that balance because it is one of the quiet ethics of the job. The first separation may be only a coarse screening. Larger pieces are caught, and the liquid below still looks troubled. You rinse the screen, scrape away the captured matter, and send the liquor onward. The hands grow slick. Warm water runs over the wrists. The smell rises when the screen is disturbed, then settles again when the flow resumes. Each act removes a little of the rough beginning. After coarse screening comes resting, and after resting comes drawing, and after drawing comes finer filtration. The order may shift with the batch, but the principles remain. Let weight fall, let oil rise, let cloth catch what remains, let heat keep the liquid willing, let the jar tell the truth. We move through these principles without hurry, because the material itself refuses to be rushed. A cloudy vat can seem discouraging at first, but the clarifier has seen many cloudy vats become clear enough. He does not need immediate beauty. He needs signs of improvement. A cleaner top after skimming, a brighter stream after the second cloth, a firmer body after cooling. These signs are like small lamps along a road, and he follows them one by one. By afternoon, even the roughest beginning may show order. Sediment gathers in a known place. The middle layer clears. The oil is drawn away. The color warms. The smell loses its raw edge. This is not magic. It is disciplined repetition. We watch it happen slowly, and because it is slow, the mind has time to rest inside each change. And as the rough material gives way to clearer liquor, we turn toward the small hazards of the work, not as drama, but as ordinary conditions, managed by habit and care. The work of a 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier is not framed by danger in the usual telling, but every old workroom has things that ask for respect. Wet floors can slip, hot liquid can burn, steam can blind a glass for a moment, a heavy tin can strain the wrist if lifted badly, sharp scraper edges can catch a finger. These are not stories for alarm. They are the quiet reasons workers move as they do. You place a pail where feet will not find it unexpectedly. You wipe spills before they spread. You turn a handle with a cloth if heat has traveled into it. You warn the helper before opening a lid that holds steam. Care is woven through the routine so thoroughly that it may look like slowness. In truth, it is the pace that lets the body stay whole. Steam is one of the room's constant presences. It softens the air, dampens clothes, fogs windows, and warms the face. It can also hide what the eye needs for a few seconds. When a lid is lifted, you stand aside from the first breath. The vapor rises, folds, and thins. Only then do you lean in. We learn this once by instruction, and then the body keeps the lesson. Heat is managed through distance and habit. The side of a vessel may be warm, hot, or too hot, and the hand learns to test without committing the palm. A rag is used, a handle is checked, a ladle is not left where its metal end will heat unnoticed. Such practices sound small because they are small. Their smallness is precisely why they can be repeated all day. The floors tell their own caution. Near the washing area, water gathers. Near the filters, drops of glue may become tacky underfoot. Near the door, grit and rain enter from outside. You sweep, rinse, and sometimes scatter a little absorbent material if needed. Boots are placed carefully, not theatrically. Walking is part of the job. A steady worker is one who arrives at the next task without incident. The smells, too, require attention. A sour batch is not only unpleasant, it may signal spoilage that can ruin quality. A scorched smell near a vessel may mean heat is too high or residue has caught. A musty cloth can betray poor drying. The clarifier's nose protects the product and the room. We breathe carefully, not deeply for pleasure, but attentively enough to notice change. Skin suffers in wet trades. Warm water, glue liquor, soap, and repeated washing can roughen the hands. The fingers may crack in winter. The palms may feel smooth and then dry by evening. A worker might rub in a little grease or keep hands near warmth before leaving. The body is one of the tools that must be maintained, and in older workrooms that maintenance was often plain and improvised. Fatigue is managed by rhythm. Lift with another person when a vessel is too heavy. Change posture before the back complains sharply. Set tools where reaching does not twist the shoulder all day. These habits grow from experience rather than formal instruction. The clarifier may not speak of them as skill, but they help him return tomorrow able to work. Noise is lower here than in many factories, but the quieter room has its own strain. Long attention can tire the mind. Warm, damp air can make the eyelids heavy. Repetition can tempt carelessness when a task feels too familiar. The clarifier counters this by returning to checks. Jar to light, cloth to hand, note to book, tool to place. The routine itself keeps attention from dissolving. There is also the ordinary challenge of smell following a person home. It may enter wool, hair, and skin. Families of workers in many trades knew these signatures. Fish glue, tar, flour, coal, ink, leather, metal, each announced a day's labor before the worker spoke. We can treat that not as embarrassment, but as part of the era's close relationship between work and body. And as these quiet cautions become part of the clarifier's movements, we watch the day soften again into routine, where safety, skill, and patience are nearly the same thing. The clarifying room now feels fully awake. Vats are warm, cloths are in use, samples stand on the shelf, and the notebook is open where the pencil can find it. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier moves among these points like someone crossing familiar stones in shallow water. Each step is known. Each pause has a reason. The room does not need to be conquered. It needs to be tended. You check the batch left from the rough morning extraction. It has settled enough for a first careful draw. The surface film is removed. The tap is cleaned. The pail is placed and steadied. The flow begins cloudy for a breath, then clears. You stop, let the first pour portion go aside, and begin again into the proper vessel. Small corrections like this save the main body of the batch. A helper rinses cloths nearby, and the sound of water folding through fabric fills the lower part of the room. He wrings too hard at first. You show him how to press instead, how to avoid twisting the weave, how to let the cloth last. He repeats the motion more gently. The cloth falls over the rail, dripping slowly. Teaching continues without becoming a separate event. The filter frame is set for another pass. This time the liquid runs better, and the room seems to ease with it. The stream shines in the gap between cloth and vessel. You watch for flecks, then for haze, then for a change in smell as the warmer portion reaches the cloth. The senses do not line up politely one after another. They work together, overlapping like low voices. A sample taken halfway through the run is not as clear as the first. That tells you the lower layer may be approaching. You slow the draw. Another sample confirms it. The remaining portion is marked for separate handling. This is how a clarifier protects quality, not by hoping the whole tank is equal, but by accepting that different layers deserve different paths. The better portion goes toward fine filtration. The lower portion returns to rest. The waste remains waste. Each has its place. The room becomes calmer when materials are sorted honestly. We can feel that calm in the way the bench clears, the labels make sense, and the pails stop crowding one another. Disorder often begins when unlike things are treated as if they were the same. A little later, the fine filtered portion surprises you with a clear, warm color. It may become a higher grade than expected. You take a jar to the window and hold it still. The light passes through almost cleanly. You do not decide too quickly. You cool a spoonful, test the body, smell again, and compare it with the sample from a known good batch. The conclusion comes slowly, which makes it more trustworthy. There is comfort in being fair to a batch. Not generous, not severe, simply fair. The clarifier's work is full of such fairness. Do not call cloudy glue clear. Do not call useful glue waste. Do not blame a material for needing more time. Do not send a customer what the label cannot defend. These rules are plain, but plain rules can hold a whole working life upright. The day's light changes in the window. Morning brightness becomes the flatter light of afternoon, and the jars on the shelf lose a little of their glow. You adjust by moving closer or waiting for better light, if a judgment can wait. Lamps can help, but daylight remains the old measure. The clarifier knows when to trust each source. Even seeing has a proper time. A small draft enters under the door and carries the smell of rain. The room answers with steam, and for a moment the air feels layered, cold near the feet, warm around the shoulders, damp everywhere. Your hands are in warm water, then in cooler air, then near a hot vessel. The body is constantly crossing small climates. It learns them all and complains only quietly. As afternoon lengthens, the rhythm becomes more inward. Workers speak less. Each person knows what remains. The filled tins from the morning are gone. The rough batch is partly sorted. The rested batch is marked for tomorrow. Cloths are cycling through use, rinse and drying rail. The notebook holds the day in short lines. We can sense the room approaching its evening shape before any clock confirms it. And as the shadows stretch beneath the benches, we move into the last working hour again, where the Oslo fish glue clarifier prepares the room not for display, but for return. The last working hour has a particular stillness inside it. A 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier does not begin what cannot be responsibly paused, unless the batch demands it. He finishes transfers already started, covers vessels that must rest, washes tools that would harden if left, and marks anything that tomorrow's hands must understand. The room is no longer expanding into tasks. It is folding them inward. You take down the used cloths and sort them by condition. Some need only rinsing. Some need soaking. One has a worn place near the edge and must be set aside for rough work, or patched if worth saving. The cloths are heavy with water and glue, and when you lift them they stretch slightly before you support their weight. They smell of the day in layers. The washing water grows cloudy quickly. You change it rather than pretend it is still useful. Clean water makes a different sound when poured into the tub, brighter and thinner. The cloth enters, darkens, loosens, and releases what it held. Your fingers work along the weave, feeling for hidden residue. A properly cleaned cloth has a different softness. You know it by touch before you see it. The tools are laid out for washing. Ladles, skimmers, paddles, scrapers, rods, and small sampling dishes each receive attention. The paddle is wiped along the grain. The ladle bowl is cleared at the lip where drops dry into ridges. The skimmer is checked for clinging film. The sampling dishes are rinsed until no tack remains. We move from object to object, and the repetition becomes nearly musical. A vessel used for finished glue is cleaned more carefully than one used for rough liquor, though both must be sound. Warm water loosens residue. A brush reaches corners. The rinse runs clearer. You tilt the vessel to drain fully, because standing water can become a problem by morning. It is placed upside down where air can move beneath the rim. Small choices keep tomorrow from beginning badly. The floor under the packing bench is wiped. A dried drop resists, then softens under warm water. The brush rasps, pauses, rasps again. Your knees or back may object, but the spot comes clean enough, not spotless. This is a working room, and old stains belong to it. Clean enough means no sticky trap for dirt, no residue near clean containers, no careless sign left for the next day. The sample shelf is checked once more. Each jar has its label facing outward. The batch that surprised you with good clarity is placed where morning light can reach it. The troubled lower portion is marked plainly. The reworked batch has its separate note. We can feel how the room's future is being arranged in these quiet placements. Tomorrow's decisions are already being made easier. The notebook receives another entry. The pencil feels small after a day of larger tools. Its point may be dull, and you turn it slightly to find an edge. The words are not poetic. They are useful. Rested batch filled. New rough batch divided. Lower portion held overnight. Cloth one worn. Need clean tins before noon. The page gathers the day without lifting its voice. A foreman may look in, ask whether the morning order is complete, and receive a nod or a short answer. There is no need for a long account unless something went wrong. The tins are in storage. The samples are marked. The room is set. Practical communication has a restful brevity when trust exists. The door closes again, and the clarifier returns to the last rinsing. The light outside is lower now. If rain has fallen, the yard shines. The window glass holds a blurred reflection of the room, amber and grey, with the movement of your arm passing across it. Steam thins as heat is reduced. The air cools by inches. Damp cloths hang in a row, each dripping at its own slow pace. The days sound separate, becoming easier to count. You cover the resting vessels. A lid settles. Another is shifted until it sits square. A third needs its rim wiped first. The covered tanks look plain, almost asleep. Inside them, the next stage has already begun. Sediment will descend. Oil will rise. Warmth will fade. The clarifier leaves them to do what they can do better in stillness than under the hand. The last pail is inverted. The last rag is rinsed and wrung. The brush is set bristles down where it can drain, or hung if the room's habit prefers it. A small trail of water leads toward the drain and is pushed along with the broom. The floor darkens where wet, then begins its slow return toward dullness. We stand in the space made by completed tasks, and as the room grows cooler, we linger with the clarifier for one more pass through the benches, because old work teaches that the last look often prevents the first trouble. The last look is unhurried and practical. The 1930s Oslo fish glue clarifier scans from left to right, or perhaps from door to vat, according to a habit built over years. Clean pails, covered vessels, hung cloths, closed notebook, samples marked, waste removed, stove checked, window secure. Nothing about this list is spoken loudly. It moves through the mind as quietly as a familiar prayer. You notice a rag left too close to a warm pipe and move it. You notice a label scrap on the floor and pick it up before it sticks under a boot tomorrow. You notice the small sampling ladle, lying on the wrong side of the bench, and hang it back on its hook. These are not failures. They are the reason for the last look. A room used all day will always leave a few small requests. The stove or steam valve is checked with care. Heat has served the work, and now it must be left safely. The metal is warm. The handle turns with a known resistance. A faint hiss diminishes. Pipes settle. The change in sound tells you as much as the position of the valve. We listen until the room's warmth feels governed rather than loose. The window latch is tried. In some weather, a little ventilation may be needed, but the room must not be left open to rain, soot, or animals from the yard. The choice depends on season, smell, and the drying cloths. You decide as workers decide, by combining habit with the particular evening before you. The latch clicks, small and final, though the work inside the vessels continues. A hand passes over the sample shelf once more, not touching every jar, but confirming their order. The glass reflects the dim room. The best sample glows faintly even in poor light. The lower grade looks darker beside it. The troubled one is cloudy enough that no one will mistake it. Honest differences stand in a row. This shelf is a map of the work's truth. Your coat waits on its peg. It has absorbed the room again. When you lift it, the fabric feels cool on the outside and familiar at the collar. The sleeves slide over tired arms. A cap, scarf, or gloves may follow, depending on the season. The body prepares to re-enter Oslo's air, carrying the warmth of the factory for a few minutes before the street takes it away. The door opens, and the harbor evening comes in. Salt, rain, coal smoke, and cold stone meet the glue room's damp sweetness. The mixture lasts only a breath before spreading. You step out and pull the door closed. The latch catches. Behind it, the room becomes muffled. The jars, vats, cloths, and tools remain where they were placed. The work is not ended, only set down until morning. We walk with the clarifier through the yard, where puddles hold pieces of window light. A barrel stands beneath an eave. A rope lies coiled, dark with wet. Somewhere nearby, another worker closes another door. The factory settles by parts, each room finishing its own kind of day. The clarifier's boots sound on boards, then stone, then the street beyond. The body feels different outside. The air is cooler and thinner, the shoulders lower. The nose clears a little, though the room's smell remains close. You may flex the fingers inside gloves, feeling where the skin is dry or tender. A tram bell sounds down the road. We follow at a walking pace, because nothing in this work has taught us to hurry. In the evening city, lit windows reveal other routines. A woman lifts a pot from a stove. A child leans over a table. A shopkeeper sweeps near the threshold. A cyclist passes with a soft chain sound. The clarifier moves among them as one worker among many, carrying an ordinary tiredness and the quiet satisfaction of tasks left in order. And while the city darkens around him, the clarifying room behind him keeps its amber stillness, with tomorrow's batches slowly separating in the dark.